Welcome back, everyone. Today I'm walking through the tear down and clean and restring and then full setup of my brand new Charvel Super Strat. If you saw my last video where I reviewed the guitar after buying it at Guitar Center as a used model, you'll note that I did indicate that the setup was no good. The neck is pretty straight, strings are a little corroded, etc. If you're into guitar maintenance tutorials, please give me a like and a subscribe. And when you get a chance, go check out the poll on my channel's post page where you can vote for which of my guitars I will be doing a maintenance tutorial on next. On the other end of the guitar, Floyd Rose. Quick tip for anyone who's doing Floyd Rose maintenance: if you use a bunch of business cards and you shove them underneath the Floyd Rose, before you let the tension off of the strings, then you can successfully work on it without it falling into the body cavity. They make specific tools to hold the Floyd Rose flat, but I don't have any. This method has worked fine for me. It's not that hard. Alright, so you're going to see me now start to inspect some pieces, remove the string tree, end up cleaning the dust off of the fretboard and the guitar now that the strings are off. This is a great time to really dig into all the nooks and crannies, sort of as best as you can to get as much free-flowing dirt off as possible. Once you start using cloths and other detergents and start scrubbing, the abrasiveness of the dirt that you leave on there can actually damage the wood. So do your best to clean off all the dirt, all the loose debris before you start doing any actual scrubbing with rags and solvents. Right now I am going to take off the pickguard to check underneath, make sure all the wiring is in good shape, see what the pickup routing looks like. I might want to switch this out to a humbucker pickup routing at some point in my life, maybe with some Fishmans, who knows. Open it up, take a look. You can see that the routing is actually pretty specifically HSS, so that sucks. I'll have to consider different pickups maybe. I like to use the Dunlop 65 cleaner and polish with some sort of fluffy rag. This is actually a Dunlop rag. It came sort of in a bundle, but I'm going to clean underneath where the pickguard is now because that's going to be impossible to clean later. The wiring looked fine to my eye in here. I am no electrician or, wiring guru, but nothing was loose, nothing was off. All of the pickups and switches worked when I tested it out, so I feel comfortable putting it back on. At this point, I'm just gonna screw in the pickguard and we'll move on. So I like to watch YouTube when I'm doing my guitar maintenance. It keeps me entertained and also keeps me a little pumped about doing the maintenance. Today I'm watching Andrew Baina review the Vola Guitars OZ QGM J3. Andrew Baina is one of my favorite guitar YouTubers to watch because he does a little bit different than what everyone else does, and he is entertaining. So shout out to Andrew Baina. Thank you for keeping me entertained while I do my maintenance. And back to screwing in this pickguard. Here you're going to see me just screwing back in the pickguard, making sure that I don't accidentally bump any of these screws off of my felt desk mat and onto the ground where they could potentially become lost forever. Pro tip: if you use a Tupperware container, you can put all of your screws into the Tupperware container, move it forward on the desk so it's out of reach of where you may just be randomly swinging your arms or your tools, and you'll avoid any mishaps. Alright, at this point I am taking the trem arm out of the Floyd Rose. That's going to allow me to flip over the guitar and get so that I can get clean access, flat access to the trem spring cavity. Taking it off now. If I left the trem arm on there, it would basically kick the guitar awkwardly angled away from me, but it also might damage the trem arm or the trem itself, trying to manage the springs and everything else. I prefer the guitar to be as flat as possible. This is my Benchmade bug out knife that I am going to use to pry off the back cover, inspecting, double checking that everything's in good working order, nothing is decayed, going through and getting more loose debris off again before I use any solvents. Now I'm checking the tightness of the screw that's in the top of your tuning pegs. This is a very important step. If you don't keep those tight, and they don't have to be incredibly tight, just tight, then your tuning pegs won't work efficiently. They'll either take too long to get to tune, up to tune, or they could even not actually turn the string at all, turn the tuning peg head at all. Here, same thing. I'm using a box wrench to double check the tightness of the tuning pegs. Make sure they're not loose and rattling. Anything loose on the tuning pegs can lead to tuning issues. This is the guitar fretboard polishing kit from Dunlop. I'm using the number 1, which is the solvent. There's a number 2 in the box, and that is the moisturizer. So right now I'm just cleaning the fretboard, doing a little bit of scrubbing. This was a used model, but it didn't look that bad. And you can see the cloth doesn't have that much dirt on it. Right now I'm getting with my fingernails in and up against the frets as close and as tight into the crevice between the frets and the fretboard as I can. A lot of people will use X-Acto knives or toothpicks or something more sharp. You can see how much dirt is in that area. That gets neglected. Don't neglect it. You may hear debate about how much of the moisturizing oils you should use at any point in time. Some people just do dots. Some people load it up like I'm going to do here. I've been loading it up for my entire guitar playing career, and all of my fretboards look beautiful and play smooth. I don't think you can go wrong using any amount, really. You're going to wipe it off in the end. Okay, so now that I've got the fretboard oiled up, I like to let it sit for an amount of time. Don't have any specific time that I use it for. It can be 10 minutes, can be an hour, can be 2 hours. I really don't care. This fretboard's in pretty good condition, so it probably won't be too long, but I'm gonna go walk my dog for a little while. For that though, shout out to Rhett Shull for keeping me entertained during the fretboard oiling process. That's an older video about his building his studio, which I watched a lot of studio build videos on YouTube over the last several months as I was trying to plan out how I wanted to redecorate my office in anticipation for these videos, but also just generally something that was pleasing to sit in, be in, play in, you know? All right, so I'm gonna let this dry for a little bit, and then I'll come back, wipe it off, double check if I need to apply a second layer. If not, then I'm gonna move on to polishing the frets. All right, and we're back. So now I am going to wipe off the excess fretboard oil, the number 2 Dunlop fretboard dressing oil. After I sort of rub it in and wipe it off, I'm going to double check and see if the fretboard still looks dry. If it is, I'll apply another coat. Generally speaking, I can get away with 1 coat. There have been a few times where I've let maintenance on any particular guitar go for maybe more than a year. Just haven't been playing that guitar, whatever the excuse is, and I will have to do more than 1 coat. I have an Epiphone Les Paul that I'll be showing you guys later. That's going to probably need 2 coats of oil because I have not played it in forever. Right now, I am polishing the frets. This piece of sandpaper, an 8000 grit, which is very tame. It's really only used for polishing. It came in the Dunlop fretboard cleaning kit with both the cleaner and the moisturizer. And then this is the polishing pad that it gave. It's just used to lightly polish the frets. It's not going to reshape them. It's not going to damage the fretboard if you accidentally get on it. That's why I'm not using fretboard guards or anything. But you can see how much grime is on the frets still. And that action of polishing it like this is going to make the frets shine and get rid of some of that dirt and grime from your playing. And here you go. So we got some shiny frets. Nothing to write home about. This wasn't a full luthier's fretwork job. No plecking, nothing like that. Just, a light polish, making them smooth to play again. It'll help with bends. Here we go, doing more dusting. More dusting. I dust a lot. One of the things, as you're cleaning the board, you're kicking up more dirt, and especially when you're polishing the frets. So kind of after every step, I end up doing a dusting, and that helps keep all of anything that could be abrasive off of the guitar whenever you're using any kind of wipe. So now we are getting into cleaning the pick guard, especially underneath the string area. Once I put the strings on, it's going to be harder to access that area with that cloth. I'll be putting Stringjoys on. These are 10 to 48s. The 48 is good for drop D. Okay, before we move on to putting the new strings on, shout out to Andrew Masters, taking me on some studio tours. This is an old one from 2022, but Andrew Masters studio tours have been really helpful in planning and designing my own studio bedroom office situation. So I like watching it. I like getting inspiration. Like I said, anyway, on to the strings. Okay, when you're putting strings on a Floyd Rose, you run into some issues. First and foremost, if you don't have strings, the Floyd Rose is trying to sink into the back cavity, which even with business cards makes it difficult to get to the screw heads with the Allen wrench. I have a very simple way of getting around that. I push the trem arm down so that the screws are present, like you just saw there. It's tough because I have to use the same hand to stick the string into the saddle that I am using to hold down the trem arm, but wouldn't you know it, trem arms, they rotate, so I can move the trem arm around to make it easier to get in there. And you'll notice as I go along, the trem arm starts to kick towards the top of the guitar, a little bit closer to my body, just so that I am comfortable with holding the string over the correct saddle while pushing it down. See, here we go. I'm rearranging the trem arm so that I get better leverage. This is the simplest way to do it. It is not the most effective way to do it, certainly not the most comfortable way to do it. If you find one of those tools that hold the trem arm still for the entirety of your string change, they sell them on Floyd Rose's website, that's probably the best. Now, I did screw up the camera a little bit, so you didn't see me with the first 4 strings doing the winding technique. Everybody has their own winding technique. I just go all the way to the end and then pull back I grab right behind the first fret and pull back until my hand is behind the second fret, and then I will try to hold the string still as I start to wind up until the string is sort of tight, and then I'll let go slowly so that it stays tight as I wind up the string. So I end up with, depending on which gauge string it is, anywhere between like 2 and 4, sometimes 5 winds on the string tree, or on the tuning peg. I don't really care if that's right or not. It works, it's fine. You're not gonna run into any tuning stability issues unless you have bad tuners. These Charvel tuners are pretty good. Put the string tree back on. At this point, I'm not sure how high or low the string tree should be. My best guess is, if I look at it visually like this, try to make it cascade over the Floyd Rose nut without it looking like the string tree is leaving a gap on the back end of the nut, or starting to bend the strings when they get just past the nut. It looks fine enough here. I'll probably end up adjusting it later. All right, strings are on. Tune to pitch. Oh man, always forgetting that I have a string winding tool. I swear I will get 2, 3, 4 tuning pegs in before I remember to use the tool every single time. At this stage, especially with a Floyd Rose, you don't have to get precision when you first tune it up. You just want to be like right about perfect, because you're gonna end up adjusting the Floyd Rose height and float. All right, we are tuned flat, and you can see that the bridge is not positioned correctly. So it's obviously pulling up tight, so we got to adjust the string tension, but it's also a little low here. So I'm going to raise this just briefly, with a tiny bit, to elevate the entire bridge. I noticed that when I was playing it before I set it up that it was a little high. So I'm going to do that on both sides, just a tiny bit, half a turn, see where that lands here, and then it's going to be a process of tuning the strings to pitch, flipping it over and adjusting the springs to tighten the springs to get the tension correct. Okay, here we go. If you hear anyone complain about the tediousness of a Floyd Rose, this is the part they're referencing. When you change string gauges or string tunings, you end up having to play the balancing act. I went from 9-42 stock Charvel string set to the Stringjoy 10-48s, so the strings have a lot more tension now than the old pair. That means that they're pulling harder than the Floyd Rose springs. So I'm going to have to deal with that balancing act to get the Floyd Rose to sit flush against the body. Right now, I am tuning the strings to pitch. That's how you can work on the balance. And then I will grab the Floyd Rose whammy bar and do a little bit of pulling sharp to stretch the strings. Then I'm going to tune, then I'm going to stretch the strings, then I'm going to tune, then I'm going to stretch the strings, and I'm going to keep going until when I stretch and then try to retune, it's basically still in tune. This is my favorite way of stretching out the strings. I don't really like how some people out there will actually use their thumb and hand to sort of like manually stretch the string. In my mind, you're stretching a spot on the string rather than the whole string. That's probably just my own OCD showing. There's guys out there like Rob Arnold who are way better musicians than I am and have way more credibility than I do that do it with their thumb. So trust them if you'd like. For my purposes, I think that it is more even if I stretch the whole string, and the only way I can come up with doing that is with the bridge. All right. Now the bridge is still hanging out of the body. So we flip it over and we tighten the trem claw. You're only going to want to go a short amount. Right now, since I know I have a long way to go, I'm doing about a quarter rotation on the screw. When you have a Phillips head screwdriver, it's super easy to know. So you have one of the arms of the Phillips head is pointing up at you. Rotate till the one immediately counterclockwise of it, while moving clockwise, obviously, because you're righty-tighty, ends up in the same position. That's a quarter turn. Super easy. And I keep doing that and then tuning to pitch until the bridge is sitting flush with the body. Once the strings are tuned back to pitch, I will check the bridge again, check and see if it's level. Turns out not. Tighten the trem claw, just a quarter turn again, remember, and tune it back to pitch. This is probably the most tedious part. In all honesty, when I put all of my footage into this editing software, I ended up with almost 5 hours of footage. It can take a long time to get the guitar set up the way you want it when you first get it and set it to your liking, because you're checking every spec, neck relief, trem height, all of it. Especially if you are going to change your string gauge, it can take quite a bit of time. But the next time you change strings, it's easy as swapping strings, because all of the other specs will or should stay where they are. See, you can see me checking again. That was, I think, maybe the 4th or 5th time that I've checked that bridge and had to stretch the strings, change the spring tension. It takes a little bit of time, but again, well worth it. Still not good. Double checking. Check both sides of the Floyd Rose, guys. A lot of times you are only going to look at the side that you would normally look at. So I would look at the top side where the heavier strings are, and that can be flush. But when you look around to the other side, which is kind of hard with a pickguard, if I'm being honest, that side might not be flush. Sometimes that's not a big deal, as long as it still plays correctly for you. But starting out with the Floyd Rose as level as possible is a good idea, because then you can start to move things around and find out what you do and don't like. Me personally, I can actually live with the treble side of the Floyd Rose having a little bit of a forward angle, meaning coming out of the body towards the headstock. The back is coming up higher than the front. But on the bass side with the low E string, I like that to be perfectly flush with the body. Almost there, guys. Look, so close. A little blurry there, guys. Sorry. Stretch the strings one more time. Tune it back to pitch. It's important to find some source of entertainment other than the guitar maintenance when you're doing these types of string changes. Thank God for YouTube, because I can watch other people do maintenance on their gear, or show me around their studios, or review guitars, or do anything else, and that'll keep me entertained while I mindlessly tune, adjust trem, tune, adjust trem. Okay, I've decided I like string trees, and I'm going to show you why. Watch this. Notice, if you can, that the strings are following the Floyd Rose drop off, going from there down to there, and then going under. And you can set it perfectly for all 6 strings using the string tree. You cannot do that with a guitar that does not have a string tree. Something like the Jackson Soloist SL3, which has the tilt back Jackson headstock, and when I try to do the Floyd Rose locking mechanism, as I put the locking portions and the nuts onto the Floyd Rose nut, the string will sharpen. But with the string tree, I can make sure, and it sharpens because the string gets pulled down across the nut. But with the string tree, it's already pulling it down. So once I get this tuned to pitch, and I get the Floyd Rose set up nice and good, it's so close right now. I have like a tiny bit that it needs to go down in the back. I may not even be able to actually screw the claw in the right amount to do that. This may be a position where I set it as is and see if it rests. I've stretched the strings a lot, but perhaps I need a little bit more. In any case, I think I like string trees. When you're putting your Floyd Rose nut clamps back on, before you start doing the rest of the maintenance with neck relief and everything else, do not screw these in all the way. You want to leave them loose so that the strings can pass through. This is particularly important when you're dealing with the neck relief adjustment, because the neck relief will change the length of the strings. If you have more relief, the strings get shorter. But if that's clamped down all the way, you're not going to be able to adjust the tension of the strings. Okay, now that I have the Floyd Rose basically set to level, I'm going to check the neck relief. And to do that, I have a Music Nomad toolkit where that comes with some feeler gauges. I'll show you what this looks like. And I have just a cheap capo that I got off Amazon. According to the Charvel owner's manual, which I always consult the manuals before I start on something like this. You fret the first with a capo, fret at the body neck joint, which on this one is going to be the 17th fret. And then at the 8th fret, it should be 0.020 or whatever you feel comfortable with, the manual says. So right now we are at significantly less than 0.020. Let me check something real quick. I don't know. It feels a little buzzy, but not too buzzy. If I use... That doesn't feel appropriate. 0.20 is way too high. When I set up my Jacksons, the Jackson manual says hold at the 17th fret, check at the 7th fret. So I'm going to do that. And I know on my Jacksons, I like it at a 0.1010. So I'm going to use this feeler gauge. And it looks like this is just a smidge lower than the 0.10. Oh, I forgot the capo. That's really low. So yeah, this had no neck relief. I'm gonna need to put some relief in here. So I will take a Allen wrench and go into the heel mounted truss rod adjustment wheel. I want to get a smaller Allen key. I want to add relief, so I want to tighten, so I'm going to go right. Quarter turn is all I'm going to go. And then we got to retune. Okay, and we'll double check. Capo on, pin, and then we'll go. I think I went the wrong direction. It feels worse. I think I went the wrong direction. So I'm going to get back in there, and I'm going to go counterclockwise. 2 turns. One to compensate for the one I did by mistake, and one to add the one I needed. And if that worked, we should be flat. And we are. So retune. And check again. This is tedious work. There we go, so that's less, but it's still not good. What's it look like on a 0.080? Still touching. I'm not gonna like that. I need a little bit more. So we're gonna go left one more time. And when I do this, let me show you. Each time I do it, I am only going the width of the 2 strings. So I put it in, touch this string, and then I go to this string. That's it. That's all I do. That's small increments. And check again. Okay. Need some more. This is actually getting tough now, which makes me think that it's only just now starting to engage the truss rod. if I look down the neck, actually I see a little bit of relief coming into it now. We should be getting close. Alright, the .08 is going underneath with just barely a touch. 0.10, so we're in the ballpark of how I like it now. Let me do a little bit of playing. Okay, feels good, and actually the Floyd Rose looks almost like it has... I think I'm going to need to screw it in just a tiny bit more. We'll wait a minute on that though, till final setup. Okay, so now that we have the relief established and it's in a good spot, the next thing to mess around with would be the string radius. If you don't know how to set up a guitar, these Music Nomad products are really good. It actually gives you a step-by-step instructions. If you look, there's a sweet little flow chart right there. And that tells you what to do depending on which type of guitar you have. So we have a individually adjustable saddle, which is the left column right here. And we have done the truss rod and the action and the radius. So action is what we'll do next. Radius I'm not going to mess with because I got a Floyd Rose. It basically has its own radius. And it's not even technically correct because it's 12 at the bridge. And this is a 12 to 16 compound neck, which means I should have probably like a 17 at the bridge. Perhaps later on I'll do a modification where I swap out the new 16-inch radius saddles. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. Alright. Action of the strings. So the action, actually, let's go here. Did I just open something? I just opened a plug-in by banging into the table. Okay, so action of strings is page 8. Page 8 says to use the little thingy. Yeah, this guy. You can use one of these gauges to measure the action. You measure it at the 12th fret, and with no capo, strings in tune. Let's double check that we're tuned. Okay. Now for this it says electric strings. You're looking for me, I like a low medium, and it is 1.5. Let's go on this other side. 0.06. So I'll use the metric side, or the inches side. 0.06 is low medium. I don't know if you can read that. Alright, I'm going to try it. So 12th fret, 0.06. Actually, wow. I think we're like dead on the high E. And the low E is supposed to be a 0.05, and that's a little high. Let's see. Let's lower it then. Find the right Allen wrench. They all appear to be gone. Here we go. To lower a Floyd Rose, you've got your poles here and here. I'm lowering the high E, so I'm lowering the low side when it's in your lap. And I'm just going to hold delicately the string gauge with my fingers on the neck while I twist. Righty-tighty will lower it, and I want to lower it to 0.05 at the 12th fret. I just checked on the screen over there. Charvel's factory settings is 1.5 millimeters. That's the other side. Let me double check that. Yeah, that's where we're at now. And it says 1.5 millimeters for both treble and bass side. Which, again, I'm about right there. Might be a little high. Or I mean, a little low, actually. Okay. I'm going to tune and double check. And looks like we are good to go. Quick little playing test just to make sure. Works for me. Okay, now the next step is to check the pickup height. Like many other things, I'm going to use the stock recommendations from the manual for Charvel guitars as a starting point. Most likely, I'm going to leave them there for a while, determine if anything sounds off sonically to me. A lot of times it ends up being that the bass strings are too woofy, and then I will lower the bass end of usually the neck and middle pickups, but occasionally I've had to lower the bridge humbuckers as well. But we'll see as I play and get a feel for what these pickups actually sound like now that it's set up to my taste. All right, final step is intonation, which on a Floyd Rose is pretty complicated, very tedious, very annoying. So what I'm going to do is let these strings sit and rest for a little while. I know these are the type of strings, the same brand and gauge that I'm going to use long term, and this is the same tuning I'm going to use long term. So I can afford to wait a little while, play around with the guitar, make sure the strings are fully settled before I check intonation. So I'm going to push pause on this video, play with the guitar for a couple of days, then come back and see how the intonation is doing. See you guys in a little while.